I read and listened to 8 books in May, and they were all so mediocre, with the exception of 1 or 2 of them. And so this is just going to be, I'm calling it like a rapid fire wrap up, because I just want to not even think about May anymore. And I'm halfway through June right now, and I'm absolutely loving everything that I'm reading. And so just seeing the difference in my reading months, I'm just like, I'm so pumped to see what else I get to read in June and just close the chapter on May. And I feel like a wrap up will just be the perfect thing to just shut that book and we'll move on to better books. So I'm going to start off with One of Us Knows by Alyssa Cole. I listened to this on audio, and I feel like that was the good format for me to choose, because if I read it with my eyes, I probably would have DNF'd it. Reason I'm saying the audiobook was great was because the narrator was really good too. The narrator definitely helped me get like engrossed in the story and what was going on. The reason I probably would have DNF'd this if I was reading it with my eyeballs is because for most of the book, it is what you see in the synopsis. You follow along with Ken, and she has a dissociative identity disorder. So she has multiple personalities. You also hear from those personalities in the book. One of her personalities has gone missing, and the other personalities think it was probably Ken who did something to her, but they aren't totally sure. So that's also kind of like a side plot going on. Well, that missing personality ends up landing Ken a job at this, I think it was like a preservation society. And so she gets to this island, and her ex ends up being there, which is a surprise to her because her and her ex ended quite badly, and his family's quite sketchy. And so, yeah, things just kind of develop from there. What I will say is that everything that happens in like the last 15% is like rapid fire real quick. Like the information is just thrown at you. I had to re-listen to certain chapters because it just wraps up really, really quickly. I ended up giving this 3.25 because the audiobook was great. I think if you're going to read this book or want to read it, listen to the audiobook. It's a great way to absorb the information. I didn't not like it, but I didn't love the book. So 3.25 is where I landed with that. I then read The Roommate by Rosie Danan, and I gave this 3 stars. This was fine. Again, another book where I was like, this wasn't bad, but this wasn't great. I feel very middle of the road about it. I'd still recommend it. For it being a romance, I didn't really love the romance aspect of it. I felt like it was really lacking in like an emotional connection between these two characters. The basis for their attraction to one another was because they're so entirely different from each other. They end up being roommates together, and she finds out that her roommate is an adult film star. He wants to sever his contract or just not really pursue making films with the big company who controls his contract. So she encourages him to go and start his own thing. She comes from a very privileged background, and he comes from a background where he just had to work for everything he needed and has. And so she kind of helps him with this side gig that eventually takes off. And they're just, like I mentioned, 2 very different people from one another. And so they're very curious and they're very physically attracted to one another. And that's really kind of the book, the romance aspect of this. The romance is very much, I feel like, rushed in the end. I liked the commentary around the adult film industry. I thought that that was really interesting and unique to add to this book and follow along with, and even just following along with a character who was part of that industry for so long. But yeah, for it being a romance, it was fine. Not bad, not great. I'd still recommend it though. I then listened to The Good Lie by A.R. Torre. This was the very first book that I have read from this author. Actually, all the books that I had read in May, I think pretty much were from authors that I had never read from before. But anyway, so this I ended up giving 3 stars as well. It was not great, but not bad. I'm even just sitting here thinking about it, I'm going like, what was this about again? So already right off the bat, just generally forgettable. So we follow along with a psychiatrist who is a psychiatrist for people who have a lot of temptations to do bad things. And so she helps them navigate that. Then there's Robert Cavan, who is a lawyer. He is the defense lawyer for somebody who is being accused as the Bloody Heart Killer. And this person, the Bloody Heart Killer, had killed 6 kids And yeah, and one of those kids ended up being Robert's kid. And also there is a romance between Robert and Gwen. I see some people say that they like the romance in it. I didn't really care for it at all. I thought I was gonna get more of the psychiatrist and following along with her and interviewing these people, and just something a little bit darker and grittier. Sisters of the Lost Nation by Nick Medina. This was the only book last month that I really enjoyed. I gave this 4 stars. We follow along with Anna, and the setting is in her reservation. Her sister goes missing. And so we're kind of following along with 2 timelines, one where her sister has gone missing, which is present day, and Anna is desperately trying to figure out where she is, what happened. And then there's this past tense where obviously it's to the lead up of her disappearance. It's a social horror around missing, murdered and missing Indigenous women. And I just think it was a very enjoyable read. I really enjoyed following along with Anna as a character. I found her story just like, it felt like she was sitting next to me. She felt so fleshed out and so real. I then listened to Sociopath by Patric Gagne. I found the first half of the book, like her childhood years, much more interesting, and it captured my attention a lot more than the second half, because in her childhood years, she knew she felt different. It's essentially her being a sociopath and growing up going undiagnosed essentially, and having no resources to help her with her sociopathic tendencies. It was very interesting, that first half. The second half, she's an adult seeking out treatments to build tools and stock her tool belt to help her cope with these tendencies that kind of rear their ugly head when things are going on in her life. I thought it was interesting. I landed on a 3.75. I would recommend the audiobook because Patric narrates it herself. Ellen Made Book Club had done a video where she talks about this book. I will link it below, and I will link her channel. It was so thoroughly well done, and I agreed with quite a bit of what she mentioned in there. Then I read The Garden by Clare Beams. I gave this 2.75 stars. I did a whole video talking about this book. The Thrills and Chills book club pick, which was The Reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson. This is a young adult thriller. This is about our young character, and her mom went missing when she was a baby. It's kind of like followed her throughout her life. Her dad decides it's a great idea to have this film crew come in, and they're going to document basically their life now and just kind of recap the disappearance of Rachel Price. So while they're there, all of a sudden Rachel Price reappears, and Belle, who is our main character, stumbles upon her mom when she reappears, and we're really just following along with Belle as she is figuring out what happened to her mom, why she disappeared. She's getting answers for things that she didn't have before. I found this very fast-paced and just engrossing. Like, I wanted to know what was going to happen. It does have an aspect to it that I really don't typically enjoy, and it's the ever convenient plot. All of a sudden, very conveniently, what they need and what goes on falls into their lap. So there was that aspect of this that I didn't quite enjoy. I would say go watch the book club discussion on Dana and Nikki's channel, because we really go into depth on a lot of plot holes in it. When I finished it, I actually gave it 4 stars because I really enjoyed it. And then after the book club discussion, I was like, they made a lot of really good points about this book and the issues within this book. So yeah, it's a 3-star. I enjoyed my time with it, but there were definitely some glaring issues within it. The last book I had read in May was While We Were Burning by Sara Koffi. I read this book in a vlog where I was trying to finish reading some of my library books because they were due right away. So go watch that video. I go pretty in depth on my thoughts on it, but I gave it 2.25. I thought it was okay. I mentioned it in the video, I think, but I wanted to kind of reiterate in different words that there was a explanation, not even really an explanation at the end, but just something about a character was discussed. I liked that commentary at that end there. It makes you think about the book a little bit differently after you read that upon reflection. Anyways, go watch that video though if you'd like to know my in-depth thoughts on it. So that is all the books from May. I am calling it mediocre May. That is what we're going with. Everything was just okay. There's nothing I would outwardly not recommend to read. So, you know, if you read any of those books and you felt that you had a different opinion on them, then do let me know. Also, let me know how your month of May was with reading. But thank you very much for watching to the end, and I hope you're enjoying what you're reading, and I'll see you in the next video.